Welcome, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Sundays where I post throughout the week I'll post Mondays for people that ask questions throughout the week, or for them to text me asking questions throughout the week. And I go live on Sundays answering those questions that were asked about whether that's about Christianity, or I try to put stuff together how I've been doing and talking about certain stuff each week. And today's episode is going to be called Soft Hearts, Strong Faith. I'm going to be answering questions that are talking about faith, friends, and forgiveness. So, for this one, I have a couple of scriptures, but you can also always find scriptures talking about stuff in the Bible too. But the first question for today is, how do I forgive someone who hurt me? So, with that question, it's not always easy to forgive people, especially when they've done something wrong to you. But you gotta also realize that even though you might not want to forgive them, you gotta always forgive people no matter whether you want to or not. And sometimes you just gotta say, I forgive you. I think I've kind of talked about it before, but sometimes you just gotta say, I forgive you, but I can't. But I forgive you, but I can no longer be around you, and I gotta accept that I can no longer be around you. But yeah, so like I said, you gotta accept their apology and recognize that you have to love some people from a distance, and realize that because you forgive somebody doesn't always mean that it's okay to get back friends with them or get back cool with the person, whether they're family, friends, close friends, regular friends, acquaintances, or whatever. So you gotta also acknowledge the hurt or pain that happened when somebody hurts you for whatever reason, whether it's big or small. And sometimes you don't want to acknowledge it. Sometimes you don't want to acknowledge the stuff when it hurts. And a lot of people will, instead of acknowledging it, will put it at the back of their minds and just let it dig at them all the time. So with that, you gotta recognize You have to recognize and validate the pain. Always validate the pain, whether it's a large pain or small pain. And don't minimize you don't never. If you try to minimize it most of the time, a good chunk of the times, it never works well for anybody. And you cannot pretend as if it didn't hurt, because if you continue to pretend and pretend and pretend it doesn't hurt, a lot of the times, if you pretend that something didn't hurt, it sometimes that's what leads to a lot of people having like depression and suicidal thoughts and causing suicide, because they pretend that it didn't hurt, or they try to minimize their feelings, or don't try to validate their feelings. So then after so long of them doing that, then when it starts to build up to a certain point, then they start feeling like they can't talk to nobody. And also, tell God how much it hurts and invite Him into the process of healing. Like, even though God already knows what's happening before you say it, excuse me. Even though He already knows what you're going through and stuff, and how much you're hurting and stuff, you always want to talk to God about it. Because sometimes, I would say, talking, even if it doesn't seem like that anything is happening, stuff is always happening. And even if a lot of the times, if you at least talk to God about it, for a lot of people, at least talking to God about what hurts you, it might not make you feel all the way better, but it will always make you feel better in the slightest bit, knowing that you're able to like get it off your chest, or get it to stop feeling like it's weighing you down. Then, with forgiving somebody who hurt you, you have to choose forgiveness. So, with choosing forgiveness, it's always a choice and not a feeling. So, with saying that, it's saying, like, okay, like, yeah, you hurt me, so like, I might feel hurt, and I'm going to feel hurt, but I will forgive you. Even if if that person that hurt you made you mad, sometimes it takes saying, I forgive you. Sometimes you gotta say, I forgive you, and then unfollow them on Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, or even saying, I forgive you. I can no longer be around you, hang out with you, deleting their number, even if you have to block that person for the sake of your mental health. So whatever you gotta do to forgive that other person. And also always remember God's forgiveness towards you and how much He has forgiven you for everything that you have done. Nobody's perfect. So everybody there's been times where, even if there's definitely been times where, like, you have hurt God, and where you have hurt God. So if you pray, remember, pray, even if you said, sometimes all you just gotta do is be like, God, sorry that I did this, and this. Next time I will try to remember not to do this. So, then also forgiveness. Forgiving other people, and sometimes you gotta forgive other people, and sometimes it takes forgiving yourself for the stuff that happens, because it unlocks freedom and healing, even if it doesn't restore the relationship. So, meaning, like, sometimes with forgiving people, like, if you say, like, there's been times where people have been like, okay, I forgive you, but I don't want to be around you. And after saying I forgive you and setting a boundary with that person and getting them to understand what you're coming from, it will help for you mentally and stuff to process your feelings better, instead of trying to hold them down and feeling. Because then sometimes if you don't forgive people, sometimes later on in life you'll sit there and be thinking like, oh, I should have forgiven this person. I should have done this, and this. So you always want to forgive people, even if you feel like you don't want to. Because you do not have to restore every, you don't have to restore every friendship, relationship, whether it's with boyfriend, girlfriend, with family member, with a best friend, close friend. Then you always want to pray for that person. And with praying for that person, you want to ask God to bless them, to help them work in their life and soften their hearts, so that they can start changing their ways and start changing the way into what they do and how they act with other people. Because praying for other people will always help if you don't realize it. Then you also, when praying for the person, when you're praying for the person, it helps. Sometimes it helps break the power of bitterness and resentment that person might have, or you might end up having for that person, if you don't forgive them, if you don't acknowledge if you don't acknowledge the hurt or pain, or if you don't choose forgiveness or pray for them. Because even if the prayer is like just saying, like, God help this person to become a better person, then when it gets further down the line, somebody's going to be bitter, somebody's going to end up having resentment, then it's going to turn, that resentment and bitterness is going to turn into bitterness towards other people. And nobody likes a bitter old person. Then you always want to set boundaries with that person when you're talking to them and forgiving them, because if you don't set that boundary with people will not realize that there are some things that you don't cross with people if you don't sit there and tell them, like, hey, it's okay, but I want you to move over it, because I do not like that. I don't like this. This specific thing that you're doing is hurting me and is affecting me physically, mentally, or whatever. So, with setting boundaries, when you forgive them, you do not have to resume a close relationship with that person. And sometimes, when you forgive somebody and don't resume, you don't always have to resume that close relationship. Sometimes it takes not being friends with that person anymore, or not being friends with that person for a little while until they're able to recognize what they're doing wrong, and letting them take the time to realize, like, I need to change for better if I want this friendship to work. So then when they are able to change and prove that they changed, then sometimes it takes starting that friendship over from the beginning, as if y'all first met. So then you also got to establish healthy boundaries to protect yourself from future pain. Because if you don't establish that boundary in a healthy way, it will turn into negativity. Then there's so much things that are going wrong, and stuff is happening that you feel like shouldn't be happening. Then next thing you know, you're sitting there like, God, why is this happening to me? And it's because you didn't establish that healthy boundary to protect yourself from other things. So then next, you want to make sure that you seek God's help. And with seeking His help, you have to recognize that forgiveness is a process, and ask God for guidance. Because with the process, you have to realize that when you're healing and stuff, and throughout the forgiveness process, you have to realize and accept that you are not on this journey alone, and that God is here to help you. There's other people to help you throughout the journey. So if you don't talk to God, especially, and then don't find somebody to talk to help with this guidance, the process of your feelings and the process of healing and your freedom will plummet and go nowhere. So even if you have like a group chat with like, I would say like a good group chat to have with other people throughout your walk and stuff, especially with God, or whether it's for your faith or forgiveness and stuff, a good group amount to have in like a group chat and stuff is like between like, I want to say like 3 and like 8, so that way everybody can hold each other accountable. And if one person is feeling down, and there's other people that can help, whether it's all people in your age range, or there's like a couple people in your age range, a couple people older, and then a couple people younger or whatever. So that way you have like different people from different walks of life or different perspectives. Because if it's like just 2 people, if both of y'all are down and aren't in that healthy process, then it's almost like a negative on negative, and it's like nobody's helping nobody if y'all are both upset or something about something and going through something. And you always want to trust the process that God will heal your heart and bring you peace, because He's not going to bring you peace as soon as you pray for it. And sometimes if you pray for it right now, then it might happen tomorrow or next week or in 3 months or at the beginning of a new year. But you gotta always remember to trust in God and trust that God knows what He is doing when He is helping you heal your heart and bring you the peace that you have been asking Him for. Then the next question. Faith without being pushy. Sharing your faith without being pushy. Sometimes it's a simple task, sometimes it's not, depending on the person. And you gotta realize that the people that want to hear it will listen. And the people who don't, some people will ignore it, or some people will try to make you stop. Like, I've seen multiple videos of people on like public properties talking to people about God, and then there have been people who have sat there and listened, and then there's people who have came in front of them and blocked their camera view or made fun of them or did whatever to them. But you always gotta remember that sometimes if people try to get you to stop, you have to keep going and ignore those people. So you gotta recognize that not everyone, you gotta recognize that not everyone will listen when you are trying to spread your faith about God. So sometimes that takes with starting with sharing with a friend who is also Christian, or talking, or that you're aware about who is also a Christian, so that way y'all can at least start with helping each other build y'all's relationship with God. Because you have to get a center. You have to surround yourself with other people who are trying to build their relationships with God. Because if you don't get your friendships, and get people around you that are also building their relationship with God, sometimes it will hinder your relationship with God. And sometimes it starts with telling your story, being consistent. With telling your story and being consistent, sometimes, first with telling your story, it'll start with it could start with telling people how you became Christian, or what made you start believing. It's outside of it's just because I grew up going to church. And being consistent is being consistent with talking to people about God, helping with people. Even if you serve somewhere, helping with God, or starting your own thing with God. And make sure that no matter what people do to you, to remember to love everybody. Because sometimes people just need love from the people who are Christian, even if they don't sit there and say, even if you don't tell them that you're Christian, sometimes it takes just loving them, and they'll be after you care about that person, make that other person wonder what you have going on in your life that makes it seem like your life is so bright, instead of pray for others, because you never know what other people are going through. And also to be kind to everybody, for the same reason, because you never know what somebody could be going through or how they're feeling, and you always just want to make sure that you're nice to other people. So with sharing your faith without being pushy, sometimes it takes starting at your school, starting with your school, starting with the people at your church, with people who you work with, or other people that are in your neighborhood. That doesn't mean let me go knock on door to door and being hey, can I share my faith of God with you? If you're sitting outside on the porch talking to somebody, you could be hey, just wondering, what do you believe in? And sometimes it takes just talking right there about God or something. But always start small. Don't just get on the stage in front of a lot of people and just be like, okay, I'm gonna talk about God. Because sometimes that's not for everybody. Or even if you like just post on Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and posting like a verse of the day, or posting something you seen that was Christian related, or posting a day in your life at church or something, or posting a day in your life as a Christian. So sometimes that's all it takes to reach other people and to questioning about Christianity and what's really happening with Christian people. So then the next question is, what if my friends are doing something wrong and won't change for the better, or if I ask them to? So with that question, you have to recognize that you can't change or help everybody, and that sometimes not everybody wants to be helped. So sometimes with realizing that you can't change everybody, if you realize that you can't change everybody, they gotta find, it just means that they gotta find out that what's good about God on their own, whether it takes them getting in trouble, going, like sometimes it takes people getting in trouble with the principal, teachers, or having to go to jail for, even if it's like an overnight thing or for like a couple of days. Like I've seen people like be super reckless about stuff, and then they went to jail overnight or for like a couple of days and realized that what they were doing is not something that they should be doing, and they changed their lives around and talked to God, started talking to God, and ended up becoming Christian. Like there was this one artist whose name is Boom Gang. I forgot what his name is now, but like he had tattoos all over his face, tattoos all around his neck, body. Be in his videos talking about drugs, money, whatever, getting into all this trouble. Kind of like if you know King Von, it's kind of like King Von without as many killings as he did, but so with all the guns and all the stuff that he had, then there was one interview he had where he talks about something that happened to him that ended up changing his perspective on like Christianity and helping him to realize that he needs to change his ways and his life and stuff around, and they may help them to realize that he needs to turn to God. So then it helped Christians rock too. It helped once they both started going to church and stuff, and realized that life seems a lot better when they're praising God versus all the fighting and drugs or whatever they did. So sometimes you have to take a step back from that person and think. Like, if you've tried to help them multiple times and they're just not changing or just not doing anything, you have to take a step back and think is this somebody that I am able to help, or are they willing to change, because if they're not willing to change after the first or second time of me asking, then this is somebody that I can no longer help, and they have to find out on their own. Then you gotta also remember and realize that it's important to approach them with love and understanding, and love them from a distance. It's always good to try to help people, but you gotta also understand that sometimes it's a no means no situation, where if you realize that they just don't want the help, then don't try to keep pushing it to try to help them. Because if they don't want the help, or they don't want to turn to Christ or anything, then you can't sit there and force the religion onto them, or force them to let you. Then you gotta also you gotta pray for guidance and wisdom how to approach the person, because you cannot approach everybody the same way. You can go up to one person and be like, hey, I seen you sitting here and I was just wondering if I could help you. And they'll be like, yeah, okay, let's go. But then you go to somebody else and you try to do the same thing. And then they start flipping you off and being like, leave me alone. I don't know you. Leave me alone. I don't want your help. I don't need you. Then sometimes with some people, it doesn't mean you gotta start with hey, I see you needed help. Sometimes it's just saying, for some people, it takes a, hey, I seen you sitting here by yourself, can I sit with you type of thing. Because, and even if y'all even if you just sit there with them and mind your own business, sometimes people will sit there and start realizing that you're not like everybody else, that you're not trying to cause harm to them or hurt them more, and then they'll start slowly opening up to you. So, in Galatians 6:1, it says, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. but watch yourselves or you may be tempted. Meaning, so like break down what it's talking about. With brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. And by the way, this was in this was in the NIV version. So when it's like that part of verse 1, it's talking about like if you see someone sinning, whether it's lust or whatever, any other sins, that then you want to try to help them get out of that sin. Whether it's you going out bowling with them, going to go watch a movie with them, or even if you go with them to go to like a park or go for like a walk or something with that person. Even if you like go and like go for a car ride and listen to music. Like there are so many like Christian songs out there that are, or like the Christian artist sounds like a worldly artist. Like there's one artist whose name I can't think of, who is in one of my playlists, and like the way he sings sounds like Chris Brown. There's another artist whose name is Alex Jean, and he gives off kind of like Pop Smoke kind of a voice and a vibe and stuff. Sometimes it takes like music that is worldly and replacing it with Christian music that sounds like artists that you have in your playlist, whether it's Chris Brown, SZA, Tyler, or whoever. Like, if you want, like, not all the songs that you have to listen to that are Christian or like gospel music, it does not have to be like, all the music that you listen to does not have to be like old school Baptist kind of song. So like, I have two different like playlists that I have for like students at my church, and then one that's like all the Christian music that I've liked in my playlist. So like I can share it with y'all. So if you want, I can share it with y'all. You would just have to comment or send a message on God Talk Sundays on Instagram, asking, and just like ask for the playlist, and I'll send it to whoever wants it. And but with the other half of Galatians 6:1 that says, "But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted," it's saying like, if you go to try to help somebody and then they're doing something and then you're like, oh, that actually looks kind of cool, the next thing you know, you're doing the same thing without realizing it, and then now you start feeling guilty about it, and now you done did it so many times that you don't even know how you got into this position and stuff. So you gotta, like, you have to express concerns. And, like, it's okay to express concern, but when you express a concern to somebody that you have, whether it's with something that somebody is doing, saying, you have to acknowledge it without judging the person at the same time. Because sometimes people will take the judgment very harshly or hardly, and think that if you come at them a certain way with trying to express the concern, they think that you're trying to go against them and don't want to be, and just like absolutely hate them. So, like, then with that, Matthew chapter 7 verses 1 and 2 says, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and the measure you use, it will be measured to you." And with that, with "do not judge, or you will be judged," for the same way, with the "do not judge, or you will be judged, or you too will be judged," it's saying, like, if you judge somebody, like, you can't judge somebody and then not expect somebody to judge you back for the way. It's like saying, like, it's a good example. Like, if I see somebody walking and I'm like, "Ooh, look at that person's wig. It's all tilted and looks crusty and looks old. It looks like it's clean." Then, like, somebody could come up to me and be like, "Hey, while you're judging that person, you need to think about yourself." Like this middle part right here, like, it's not even. So it's like it will look even right here, and then, like, once you get to the back, it, like, goes over this way. So then when you get to the back, it's like the back is split like this over here. So then it's like if somebody came up to me and be like, "Hey, while you're talking, let's talk about your hair and how it's not even, and this, the color on your hair is dying out. You don't even got your edges done." Or even if it's like God being like, "Well, you're judging that person, and you gotta also recognize that you are also not perfect so you cannot judge other people for what they have going on through their life, just because you don't like the way it looks." So then, for the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So it's like how I just explained it, where no matter how, the same way you judge other people and how they look or what they have going on through their lives, there's probably somebody that's thinking the same thing about you, and you don't even realize it. So you gotta also think, like, if you see somebody that looks a certain way, you gotta realize that, well, like, what if that was me in that situation. So then lastly, you gotta recognize that not all heart. You have to recognize that all hearts are not going to align with what your heart has. Meaning, so you gotta. First thing is you gotta find peace in closing that door or chapter. Meaning that sometimes realizing that some people are not for you, you have to separate yourself from the people, from that person, from that group of friends that you thought were your friends, and realize that even though that you might not be around that person no more, then there are other doors that are open for you that are better for you. And an example of it is like puzzle pieces, or let's see. So it's like if I get this piece of paper and I just put, and there's something on it, and then like if you sometimes that friendship will break, that relationship will break and fall apart, and all these other things will start happening. But then, like, when I say it's like puzzle pieces, it's like saying, like, oh, if I try to grab this piece of paper and then this piece of paper and then try to put it together, it's not gonna be able to be fit. It's not gonna fit together. It's no longer able to be put together, or if the pieces cannot be put together. But if you, so it's like saying like only certain pieces go certain places, and sometimes that means that like, oh, this person might not be able to be friends with me, but it's okay if but that just means that they need to be friends with other people who are more like that person, and I need to be friends with other people that are like-minded, not me, so we can grow our faith together and we can grow together and become better people. And sometimes with recognizing that not all hearts are not going to align with yours, sometimes it just means that you have to burn bridges with people. So sometimes if I can figure out what I did with my bag, okay, just 1 second. Okay, so burning the bridges is it's saying, like, if you and this person can no longer be friends, then sometimes you have to let it go. Let God. And sometimes not aligning means protection, redirection, or preparation for future things that are happening. And you gotta also be responsible for loving others and not changing them. Release. And also it means release, respect, and tell the truth. So you gotta love someone without alignment, with trying to force an alignment with what you have versus what they have. That's all I have for this week's episode on God Talk Sundays for soft hearts, strong minds. This week's scripture is Isaiah 41:10. This is, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Remember, God loves you. People love you. I love you. Follow God Talk Sundays on Instagram and YouTube. And I will see you guys next week.